Welcome to another episode of Carry On Friends, the Caribbean American podcast. I'm Carrie Ann, and I am so excited for you to hear this conversation with my guest, Cavel Khan, where we talk about advertising and how Caribbean brands can leverage social media platforms. But before we get into the conversation, it's time for the Breadfruit Minute. I know some listeners know this already, but in case you didn't know, I produce podcasts. Not just this one, but at least 4 others through my company called Breadfruit Media. The Breadfruit Minute is a quick segment where I share what's coming up on the other shows in the Breadfruit Media family. For this segment, I'm just going to highlight 2 of those shows. The Style and Vibes podcast, which dissects Caribbean music, style, and culture. Also, Strictly Facts, a guide to Caribbean history and culture. And the cool thing about Strictly Facts is that every episode, there is a song for that, or a work of art that references an historical point. And I will include a link in the show notes so you could check out Strictly Facts and Style and Vibes, as well as the other shows in the Breadfruit Media family. Okay, that's it for the Breadfruit Minute. And now let's get to my conversation with Cavel. Hello, Cavel, brethren. Up here, family, me that have the last couple episodes. Welcome to Carry On Friends, the Caribbean American podcast. What's going on, brethren?
Hey, Carrie Ann, thank you so much for having me. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. So why don't you tell the community of friends a little bit about who you are, Caribbean country you represent, and all that good stuff.
All right. I am Cavel Khan. I am originally born and raised in Jamaica, West Indies. I come from multiple places in Jamaica. I'm a bit of a nomad, so I was born in St. Elizabeth, and then I grew up in between Hanover, Ramble in Hanover, Savlamar, and then in Montego Bay. So moved around a lot while I was there. Went to school at Cornwall College, learn or leave. Someone special to you, I know, went to school there also.
Yes.
Big up my boy Nico. I consider myself an old boy, even though I never graduated there, and migrated to the U.S. and to New York in high school from that point, and grew up in New York, went to school in Long Island, undergrad and grad, both at state school. So sometimes I joke around and say I'm a product of the state. And now I work in tech. I've spent, I don't want to count the years, but a long time working in the tech space. So for companies like Microsoft, Twitter, Vice Media, and now I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Tumblr, the social app, which was recently acquired by Automatic, which is the parent company of WordPress, which something like 40% of the internet is built on WordPress. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
My platforms, all of them are built on WordPress.
There you go.
I'm in that 40%.
Thank you very much.
Boy, that's a lot. But we're representing Western Jamaica, we're representing Brooklyn, we're representing New York, and of course, Jamaica, Caribbean worldwide. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. So tell me, what does your role at Tumblr, Chief Revenue Officer? And people are like, wait a minute, Tumblr? People still use Tumblr? What's that?
Yeah, so Tumblr has been around for 14 years and it still continues to be strong. It's the platform that is the canvas for creativity, and especially during COVID, we see so many people coming on and saying they're either restarting their blogs or starting new blogs. It's just a space where you can have creative expression, where you can express your obsessions, so to speak, around things, and where you can find communities around anything that, is appealing to you. So it's a great, great platform. I secretly want it to be like the dominant platform for dancehall music. I want all the artists on there. So that's my goal, but don't tell anybody. Once I get it going, I'll start reaching out and getting the folks on there. But
don't
my
say
role,
nothing.
Yeah,
we'll reach out to the people and links on links.
We still won't get it. Because guess what? We want to put money in them pocket where them not get it from Instagram or Facebook. So you know what it is.
Hey.
So my role is Chief Revenue Officer. I primarily operate in the advertising sales space. So I partner with brands who want to connect with the audiences that are on our platform. And so my job is to build out the teams, the infrastructure, the operations, the strategy, and the business marketing plan that's going to grow revenue for the organization. Most platforms, I mentioned I worked at Twitter prior, and I worked at Microsoft. Most of the content that we all get on the internet is free because it's subsidized by advertisers, and it's a value exchange. I know some people like to put up ad blockers and say they don't want ads, but the reality is advertising is good. If you're sick and you have a tummy ache, you know to run and go get, some product for it, probably because it was advertised to you. So advertising is not bad when done correctly and not intrusive. And so my job is to drive the revenue for the organization, primarily based on advertising revenue, but also looking at other options to build revenue, even including, are the creators. So Tumblr is this platform that has so many artists on it of all forms, and can we find ways to help them to make money on the platform by connecting them to fans and creating a fandom and maybe charging a fee or something like that. So my goal is going to drive revenue to figure out all the ways that we can drive revenue and grow the platform and make sure it's a strong platform for the users.
Whoa, that's a lot. But I really
Yes.
want to talk about the little secret, the not so secret, and kind of talk about advertising in social media and the landscape of that, because I don't think people quite understand how it really works. There's a lot of misconceptions like, yo, me just need 1,000 people and me can charge rate it. All of them something there. So talk to us a little bit about how advertising on social media platforms work a little bit. And then we, of course, because this is Caribbean Americans, you bring up the artists, them. What
Yeah.
are ways that the Caribbean audience is not appreciating about advertising? What opportunities we're missing? So let's first talk about advertising and social media platforms. How does it really work?
Yeah, so there's two lenses to look at this. One is if you are a company looking to advertise your services and your business on the platform, social is an amazing space to be, because that's where your audience is spending a significant amount of their time. And again, obviously I represent Tumblr, but whether you're talking about Twitter, Snapchat, now TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and even some of the smaller ones, Pinterest, etc. People are spending a significant amount of their time, and when they spend time on the platforms, they are giving the platforms a lot of information about them, about their interests, about their likes. And so if the platform is doing its job well, without sort of being too over intrusive, which some of them are, they can look at simply who you're following, the things that you like, and say, okay, you have an interest in this. Let's find brands who want to find people like you and serve advertising to them. And there's a number of models. We probably don't have enough time to go through it, but there's a number of ways that you can buy that advertising. You can either buy it if your goal is based on reach, and so you buy it on a CPM so you can get as many eyeballs as possible to drive awareness around your brand. Or if your goals are more performance based, meaning you want to spend $1 and know what your exact return is, then there's ways that you can buy on what you call like a cost per action, or a CPA, or a cost per download, or a cost per install. There's a number of different costs per models that you have in advertising, which allows you to say, okay, especially if you have a digital business or something of that nature, or online store, someone can click on it and then you only pay when they actually buy something from your store. In those cases, the cost is a little bit higher because you're getting such a high value versus an awareness where you're paying a little bit less on the advertising side, because you're not measuring directly the advertising, but it's still incredibly valuable for your long-term sort of value of your customer. So that's one side of it, and brands should figure out, especially Caribbean-based brands and brands in the Caribbean, people are willing. We're in a flat world now, and this is where the Caribbean can do so much better, right? And some of the work I do, I'm trying to do on the side is, with the flattening of the world, with the speed of delivery, with all the things and infrastructure that's being put in place, you can have your little shop in Jamaica, and all you got to do is figure out your logistics for delivery, and you can advertise to folks who are interested in Jamaican foods or Jamaican art or whatever it is, and sell it directly, not just to the country, and I'm talking Jamaica, even though it's the Caribbean, but you can sell it anywhere in the world by finding those people in the spaces. Because if someone may be in, I don't know, Japan and they love dancehall music and they're willing to, buy something related to it, or they love Jamaican culture, and they're following all these different handles and they're putting up stuff about Jamaica, then we know there's an interest there. You can still sell a product to them. There's enough platforms. Part of Automatic, we actually have our own platform in WordPress and in WooCommerce where you can build that up in Jamaica and then, sell it to the world. So there's a lot of ways that brands from both in the Caribbean and outside the Caribbean and the diaspora can take advantage of social media. So that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is those who themselves are influential or want to monetize based on being on the platform. So, and there again, there's a number of different models. So everyone knows about influencer marketing, right? So influencer marketing is where your job is to build as big an audience and presence, and that then becomes your equity. So if you are on, I'll use YouTube as a quick example. If you're on YouTube and you have a YouTube channel, and that channel consistently is getting, a couple 100,000 or even millions of people on the platform, YouTube itself has a model that allows you to monetize that audience, meaning when someone comes and checks out your content, they put a 30-second or a 15 or a 6-second ad right before your content, and then they do a rev share with you on that. So that's one model, and then they send you the check. Another model, which is a little trickier, and the platforms don't all really love this, is the core influencer model, where you're actually monetizing that audience by that video that you create. You go out and you seek brands that are interested in your content and your audience, and you incorporate that brand into the content itself. You still have to, there's sort of FCC laws around attribution. Right? You have to share that this is advertising and you're being paid to include that product. And there's ways to do that on social. But there, you're taking, again, this audience that likes your content, that's coming to the platform, but you are directly getting the check. So you're not waiting on the platform to give you a check. However, the pros and cons of both is, on one side, the platform is doing the selling for you. So you don't really have to have an ad sales team and you have to go out there and find the brands. On the other side, you yourself have to go build these relationships and get these brands to want to advertise on your platform. And so that takes a bit of work also. On one side, you get a share of the revenue. On the other side, you get the vast majority of the revenue.
Wow, that is a lot. And I'm glad that you shared all those different costs per and different things, because I think there's a lot of misconception about how to monetize. And I think what really jumped out to me was you are nurturing that platform and on the platform and engaging consistently. So it's not enough to have 1,000 people on put on, like
Right.
Celebrities are the ones who are most likely to have like 1 million people and don't interact as often. But the interaction, you're saying, is the key, because you're constantly on the platform. People are constantly engaging. And what I find a lot of times is that for a smaller brand like myself, when people look at my 1,300 people, they're like, oh, you don't have a lot of people, but they're not looking at the engagement of these 1,300 people versus someone else with a larger number. So tell me a little bit, or explain a little bit, why the engagement is not necessarily better than the number, but is something that's often overlooked, particularly with Caribbean brands or smaller brands not paying attention to the engagement.
Yeah, I mean, look, marketing is a pretty complex space, and at the same time, it's actually very simple. And a simple explanation of it is this: a brand wants to be associated with, and get in front of an audience, and they need to be associated with content and people who are authentic in those communities that they want to align with. So if you are, I'll use easy ones. Nike as a shoe company aligns with sports. So they want to be around authentic sports content, because that's a big part of their alignment, to keep it simple. And so there is this balance between scale and engagement. Both are important, but it comes back down to the goals, right? Like, as I said, engagement should be highly valued, especially if you're looking for, you want to build this long-term value, but also you're looking for like more direct return. So if you are a brand, and even if someone has smaller scale, the authenticity that they have and the engagement of that audience that cares about them means that when that person says to their audience, you know what, I genuinely believe in this product. I'm not just taking money from it. And in most, I shouldn't say most, a lot of high integrity folks, they don't take money from every brand. They want to make sure that the product is something that they either use or they actually believe in it. And so they feel, because they have a trusted audience that they're talking to. So, when you're talking to a brand and you're trying to get them on board, even with an audience of 1,300, that may not have an appeal for someone whose goal and has a marketing goal to hit 10 million folks, but a small shop, for example, you, Carrie Ann, are heavily Brooklyn based, and I assume a certain percentage of your audience is Brooklyn based. So a small shop in Brooklyn who needs to do local advertising beyond just a newspaper or a seamless ad should look and say, hey, 1,300 people actually represent something significant for me. And if Carrie Ann actually likes our products and likes our store or likes our restaurant, we should look at her podcast as a place to reach that audience. So there's a balance there. It can't be zero scale, and it can't be just about no engagement at the same time. So there's a balance that has to be looked at. And when you're talking to brands and you're trying to get advertising on board, you have to tell the story about why your scale plus the engagement equals value for them based on their business goals.
I like that equation, scale plus engagement equals value. Translate that. Ooh, I like that. Ooh, I'm going to write this down. I'm going to tell everybody.
Take it.
So listen.
I get paid a lot of money for that advice. I'm kidding.
No, so this is why I wanted to have you on, because already like my brain is spinning like, okay, so now that we have the basic on advertising, you and I already don't know we love with music, we love with this. Let's talk about the Caribbean culture that is severely we don't completely own it, and we're not necessarily monetizing it the right way or in as many diverse ways as possible. So tell me, what are you seeing in the space? Inquiring minds want to know.
As it relates to the Caribbean?
Yes, and social media, advertising, or all the platforms. I feel like the Caribbean audience, we tend to stay in the Instagram, and we do have a Caribbean Twitter a little bit, but like Tumblr and all these other places, like,
Yeah, as I said, my dream and vision is that the Caribbean market is, as a whole, is pretty significant. And at the end of the day, it comes down to dollars and cents. And there's billions of dollars being spent every day across multiple industries across the Caribbean. And so, if audiences and brands who are focused on that market really start to tap into these tools that are completely democratized across, all these platforms, yes, they may be US based for the most part, but anyone in any country can sort of develop them. And I think I talked about dancehall music. I look at dancehall, we were all happy and had fun, when Bounty, the Versus, and like they showed that like we can drive 500, whatever it was, 500,000 or 5 million or some huge numbers.
Big numbers.
Big number.
Big.
And it's, Ciroc sponsored it, and it was like, hey, I remember Bounty saying like, we are marketable, and he kept saying like, we are marketable, don't underestimate us. Yes, that's true. So these multinational companies that focus on the Caribbean market, and these dancehall artists and these celebrities and the soca artists and all the folks who carry the same influence that, in other markets like the US carry influence, they need to sort of come together and hit the one or two platforms, and then go to the platforms and actually work with them and say, hey, here's what we're going to do, because they carry an audience with them. They carry millions of people who love their music, who want their content, and go to the platforms and start striking agreements with the platforms, not just taking what they can get. Because as you build up and you get into the millions of fans, I look at like Shensia, who's blowing up right now. Like Shensia has a real opportunity to be making money, no different than any hip hop artist, because she has that type of scale. And so she can start partnering with the platforms. She can start partnering with brands and say, here's my loyal and engaged audience, and start doing deals that are going to drive money for her beyond just all the money she's making from touring and album sales and all of that. So the Caribbean, I think, both small brands as well as those who are influencers in the Caribbean market should really focus on the monetization strategies of these platforms and really start tapping in it to get an even bigger audience and get an even bigger scale than what they have just from being in the Caribbean. And I think we're so used to like old school ways of making money, and we want to move so fast that no one, I haven't seen yet, and I could be wrong. I don't have a full, spectrum, but I haven't seen yet anyone from the Caribbean who's major really taking advantage of this and using it to make bank the way they can.
Listen, I wanted to jump in because you just said what I was like on the tip of my tongue, which is no one is thinking outside the box to leverage these platforms. We kind of we see this model and we're like, okay, we're going to copy this model. Whereas culturally, we're just different. And so we need to approach it a little differently and be aggressive with it.
Right.
But it's also, I think, about knowledge of the platforms. And that's where you come in on this podcast, telling us all these things and what's available. So I love that. So tell me a little bit about Tumblr, and particularly, I mean, you said it at the top and it was just like, how can dancehall artists, participate in a Tumblr and, with a audience attention squarely focused or 95% focused on Instagram.
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like?
But guess what? Instagram is changing their algorithm, and you're going to start to see a lot less of your organic stuff showing up and getting in front of your audience. So people better learn to adapt.
By the way, this conversation made me say, all right, after this, I'm going to check out Tumblr. And it's just based on what you said, because I was like, I never thought about it. But go ahead.
Yeah, look, any platform that has scale and have millions of folks on it, like, you can monetize. You can take a tiniest platform, because guess what? The reason I mentioned the dancehall artists is because anywhere they go, their audience is going to come with them. And so Tumblr as a platform has always, from the beginning, been a space of discovery for music. So whether you're talking about, Odd Future or Frank Ocean, even Billie Eilish, like so many. Recently, I think last week, the biggest pop star in the world, Taylor Swift, dropped her album and did exclusive on Tumblr. And like millions and millions of people saw that. And she did like a 15-second exclusive partnering with our team. So all these platforms have folks that you can work with on the partnership side to get you up and running, to get your presence going. So don't, look, what I'm saying at Jamaica, don't put all your egg in one basket, right? So why everybody just run just to
Listen,
TikTok,
and it's capture land, like we say, it's capture land, because like you said, the minute the platform changes their algorithm, changes what they're focusing on. So I don't have Reels, right? But my content is deprioritized and Reels content is prioritized.
Exactly.
And, for me, it's exhausting. I'm not going to do a video and I do a reel and a story because it's our Instagram. Basically, Instagram make me a puppet. Me have to move, of course, based on what they want to do versus going back to what you said, the authenticity of the content to engage. But yet force me to do this to be authentic.
Exactly. Listen, if you're not paying for it, you're the product. And people need to realize that. So they are using it.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Taught the things. So to your point, diversifying a platform, but then making that work. So I like Twitter, but I'm open to exploring other platforms where I can truly be my authentic self, because after a while, like certain platforms are just exhausting. And I think that's the other aspect. So talk to us a little bit about the overwhelm with all these platforms in terms of not focusing on all of them, but being strategic and picking the ones that you focus on.
Exactly. And the beauty, to get back to the Tumblr question, the beauty of Tumblr is that the founding principle of Tumblr was exactly to be the opposite of all those platforms, where they force you into these boxes and say, well, you have to make a reel, or you have to do a picture, you have to do this. On Tumblr, you can do anything creatively that you want to do. If you want to be a writer, you can write. If you want to do video, you can do video. If you want to do images and GIFs, whatever that blog you want it to be, it could be there. And especially, again, if you're an influencer, if you're a content creator, you can switch it up. You can post your podcast up there, but then you can do a write-up. You can do Q&A. You can do so many different ways to deeply engage with your audience. And you're not limited to like, oh, I got to do a Reels and follow this rule and yada, yada, yada. And the other beauty of it is just the cross-post capability, right? So you can pull content from your YouTube, from your TikTok and everywhere, and curate it into this own space, and then start thinking about, once you build that audience, how do I monetize this? And our job at Tumblr is to build the tools to allow the creators. One of the ways we're very different is like, we want to make sure that the creators who make the platform amazing with the content they have are sharing in the revenue success. And so I can't speak to a lot of it now, but part of the plans long term is to make it easy for people to come to your platform, whether it's you're going to start a merch line and selling merch, or you're going to sort of start charging for premium content, putting a paywall there so that people who are truly your fans and who want to sort of support you can make it easy for them to pay and get premium content or other sort of goods and services that you'll be selling there. So that's one of the big differences and why I love Tumblr. Tumblr to me is like this. I'm so used to being an underdog. It feels like it was this amazing platform. It's now an underdog, and I know how to win as an underdog. You're talking about that boy from country in Jamaica, who's not a chief revenue officer of one of the biggest tech companies in the world. So
said we so.
Me know how to do it.
Said we so. Don't count us out.
Exactly.
We're doing this podcast for 7-8 years, and people tell me, say, Carrie, when you pay attention to the Caribbean audience, watch me. With us, I go focus on this thing.
It's a lot of money.
Listen, but I'm honestly, this was not in the intention, people. This was not the intention for Cavel to sell Tumblr. But I think it's about alignment, because you came on and you were talking about it. And I've been in a space where I'm evaluating how can I grow my audience. And I think that's the other thing, fear of starting over at zero, right? And not bringing the one bag of people you have. Whereas I'm okay starting at the bottom and discovering new audiences. And I'm like, wow, this is something I really, truly need to explore. Right. So what kind of strategies can people begin to build to grow their audience? And then what do you see as like two mistakes that people are making when it comes to advertising in the space?
That's a tough question, and it's broad because, if we're thinking, I primarily focus on really, really large companies. And so what they do there is different than what maybe some small brands do. I will say the one of the big mistakes that people make is that they don't focus enough on building brand love and creating content and understanding your consumer and being where the consumer is in a very real way. We're such a performance-based consumer economy where people just want to spend $1 and see $1 come back right away. And yes, that's important. I'm not saying don't do that, but that's only a part of the equation. That's only a part of the purchase funnel. The reason they created the purchase funnel is to tell you that, yes, at the bottom, someone's making a buy, but they need to first be aware of your product. They need to have some connection to it and consider it for the right reasons before they get to that point. They're not just going to see an ad on Instagram and then say, oh, I want that and buy. In some cases, that could happen. I'm not saying no, but you're not going to really hit the big scale until you start to build brand love and build connection. And that's how smaller brands and companies can outrun some of the bigger brands. So that's a mistake that I think people make, is that not really focusing on their brand, what their brand represents, how that's connected to the consumer that they want. So if you're about the Caribbean audience as an example, like what are you doing for the Caribbean audience? How are you showing the Caribbean audience authentically? Right? Like in America, we talk about African Americans, and one of the things I always tell people, I'm like, Black people are not a monolith. Like they are too long, so I can only talk patois and American. I can't talk with a nice accent when I have. But at the end of the day, you have Caribbean Black people, you have, American-born Black people, you have people straight from Africa, from different places, and we all have our different nuances. So how do you represent that authenticity as a brand if you want to appeal to a Caribbean audience? There's millions of us out here. The thing that I'm passionate about is that millions, if not billions of dollars are spent by people both in the US and in the Caribbean on everyday goods. But how are they harnessing that power? Because no one's really paying attention to them. They just assume that they're going to come along. I'm going to make this ad for these other people, and you're just going to buy my stuff anyway. And the power that exists is that taking these platforms, again, me love dancehall, I come up in a dancehall, I learn so much from it. If 50 artists get together and say, you know what? We got to remove our content from one or two places. If they not do a deal with it, and we're going to put the content somewhere else and tell our audience, come here, so come get it. And then they come get it. And that artist starts to support the community. And then brands start to support the audience. That's how you build an ecosystem. That's how you build an ecosystem, because we have never lived in a time where the infrastructure to scale and to drive massive growth has been easier. And that's what these platforms have created. And we as a community just aren't taking advantage of it to the levels we need to. So people still focus on what I call like old school traditional advertising. I don't care if you're a small sort of shop in Brooklyn, a food place, like you can take a few dollars and super target who it is that you want to be. You can target by geographic location, you can target down to zip code, and then you target by interest. You layer those things on. That's how you drive your growth. You don't just have to put something in a local newspaper or just put it on, pay for some seamless ads or whatever it is. I'm using food as one example. If you have any kind of store or small shop, there's enough data in these platforms that it can help you to drive your business and drive growth. And the big mistake people make is that they don't do it. They get intimidated by it.
Yeah.
Stop being intimidated.
You know, the thing that I talk to somebody about is we love beat chess like you saying across finish line and say we lick up with Talawa or we're Caribbean. But when it comes to certain things, we're coming like puss. We no longer are the lions. We're cats, little kittens.
So true.
You know, and it's like we need to, if we're going to live that line that we are big and broad and we're Caribbean strong, we need to kind of live that across all things and not just music and, you know, everything else, our track or where we feel comfortable.
Right.
And I think to your point, we've seen that it's this fear of doing this new thing because we don't have the experience in this new thing.
Exactly. So I think there's great opportunity there. And look, I come from Jamaica. I love Jamaica. I love the Caribbean. And, you know, I now sit on the advisory board of Tech Beach and want to take everything that I'm learning and sort of make sure I'm giving back to Jamaicans. Because again, like we live in a flat world. The reality is when you look at things like employment and all the challenges that, you know, the Caribbean face, at one point in time, you were landlocked. Now you're not. Now, I hope I look at youth in a Clonwell or somebody, a girl in Mount Alvernia right now, and listen to me and decide to start up a YouTube and start create some amazing content and then start monetize it and start reach people all over the world. And before she graduated from school, she already have millions of dollars in her bank account. Like that's the things that we need to be doing. And I know plenty of Jamaicans have the talent, the skill, everything for go do it. We just need them to realize that it's already here for you to do. You know, just focus on it and take your time, and you can get there. Like there's people. One thing I love about my company, and I didn't come on here to talk about the company.
Yeah, it was a plan, but it's aligning.
But there's a gentleman, Joel Dean, who works for Automatic. He's an engineer in Jamaica.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I've heard about him a lot on Twitter.
Yeah, Joel, you know, Joel and I work for the same company. I tell him he lived the best life because he get to live in Jamaica and work for the same company I do, and I gotta live here in Brooklyn. I'm like, you get the sunshine and the beach, and I'm living in this ice box in Brooklyn. But again, it just speaks to the fact that if you have talent now in the like you don't even have to depend. I don't need to knock the government of the Caribbean, but sometimes they need to get their act together. But as an individual now, you don't have to depend on them. Scrap, do whatever you want to do. Coding is something where like you don't even need to go to college for it. It's free and it's out there. You can learn. You can, as long as you can get access to the internet, even on your phone, you can go to code.org and all these places, Khan Academy, and you can start learning the code. And there's organizations, Tech Beach and others, and plenty in the Caribbean now that really want to teach kids like how to code and how to take advantage. And once you get that knowledge, like you can go work for anyone because they don't care about your degree. All they want to do is, can you do this? And they're going to give you a test. And as long as you can pass the test and show that you know how to code, you don't need a college degree. There's so many places now that the world has changed. Stop operating like this is 1980. This is 2021. And you don't even have to depend on your country to provide you with a job anymore. You can go out there and there's a shortage. When I tell you there's a shortage in engineers, it is insane. There are jobs right now that from so many companies I know that are paying hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for engineering, and they can't find enough engineers. They cannot find enough engineers. And so here's the Caribbean full of smart, talented people who can start saying, hey, we're going to be the tech hub and the engineering hub, of this region, and can start training all these kids. And in 10 years, all of them are working for multinational companies, local companies, you name it. And you're no longer limited in terms of the services, the job pool, everything by your region or your country. And that's the vision for what the Caribbean needs to be and take advantage of, because we have the skill set and we can do it. But, we just need the the investment and the knowledge to spread for it.
Yeah, listen, that's why I said I have to have you come on because I had Marlon talk about the work he's doing. And, if anything, the pandemic really, it show up that we can't be, one industry dependent
No.
in the Caribbean. It's ridiculous,
Yeah.
right? And we need to fix up some things. So, there's no reason the Caribbean right there, America foot door, like, boop, 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 knock, knock. Who's there? Boy, blue, the
Right.
Caribbean, right? And, talent and skills. So the last point you made, it seamlessly transitions to the work that you do in terms of diversifying the ad space. So tell us a little bit of some of that work. I know you're an ad color. Tell the audience a little bit about what that organization is and the work you're doing in terms of diversifying the space.
Yeah, so I came to Microsoft out of grad school, and started at the company, and it was my first real exposure to corporate America. And over the years, I realized just how fortunate I was, to sort of have come into the company I came into and into the space I did. I work hard for it, but I also got lucky. And so it's a known issue. It's a known issue everywhere that as I started to grow in the industry, I realized just how unfortunately rare I was. Where I tell people now, like I've been in this industry since 2005, and I can honestly say, you know, probably 80% of the rooms I've been in, and I spend a lot of my times in meetings in rooms, I am probably the only minority in that room. And in a lot of cases, the teams I'm on, I'm one of a very few. Now, in the last 3 or 4 years, it has gotten a bit better, signs of progress. But, I've been either the first or the only in many roles I've had throughout my career. And so, yay, that's awesome. And well, that's not awesome, but great that I'm fortunate to break through and get this, have the amazing career I've had. But that's not good enough for me. I'm like, I need to kick this door open and make sure I'm not the last one, because I know plenty of people could do it just as well as I can. I don't consider myself to be special in any way. I just had fortunate that I met a lot of really amazing allies and people who invested in me and coached me and allowed me to sort of be where I am today. And so the work I do, Ad Color is an organization started by Tiffany R. Warren that is focused on ensuring that we're shining a light on all the diverse people who contribute to this massive, multi billion-dollar industry that is advertising in the creative world. And me personally, I participated in that organization, came there, I found a community, I found mentors, I found people that look like me. There's a good saying that you can't be what you can't see, and so it allows, especially those who are coming in who are more junior, to see that, oh yeah, you can go be, that you can be a CEO or a chief revenue officer or a chief marketing officer or whatever within these companies. And also, by the way, all the entrepreneurs who have branched out on their own and started all kinds of companies in this tech and advertising space. So I've spent a good chunk of my time. Two things I'm passionate about is diversity and education. And so I also sit on a school board as part of the work I do outside of the day job, because I think education is so critical to societies growing and doing better, and especially those of us who are people of color. And then on the diversity side, there's a number of, whether it's, speaking on panels or, sort of being in advisory groups or the ad color work, I just have to make sure that I am not the last in the ways that I've been able to have success in this industry. Because look, I think when I interviewed the first time at Microsoft and they asked me about like what my skill or my talent was, I said, the only talent I have is drive. Like, I'm not good at anything else, but I have a drive to succeed and I know how to learn. And the reality is, yeah, I wasn't one of those people who knew, oh, I want to be a doctor. I wasn't good with the football. I wasn't that fast. I didn't have the DJ skills. I didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer, an engineer. None of that appealed to me. None of it. And what I found in this space, this advertising, and marketing space, is that doesn't matter what you're good at. It doesn't matter if you just love to chat. It doesn't matter if you love to write. It doesn't matter what it is that you're good at. As long as you're willing to work hard at it and you're passionate about it, I guarantee there is a role in this vast industry where you can go be successful and build the life that you want for yourself of it. I'm a talker. I'm in sales. You know, my job is to convince people. Like, why can't we just love chat and debate and love have an argument, literally. And I found a way to turn that skill into going to brands, understanding their needs, and having conversations with them and saying, hey, let me help you solve that goal. Let me help you to solve that goal. There's nothing dirty about what I do. I'm not a car salesman trying to just get you to buy something. I'm genuinely building solutions to help solve problems. But my skill is I just love to chat.
You know, this is so unexpected a conversation because you've now inspired me. Well, me love chat. And then it always say me love chat. Maybe I need to consider our role in advertising.
Yeah.
Like,
Why not?
You came here and just completely turned the tables on me. Like, let me reconsider my whole life and career trajectory.
Man, you did the right thing because see, I work for you own. That's the difference. You own this platform. But and Love Talking going to bring more people to come listen to you. And then you're going to start you call me up and then I'll help you get in touch with the brands that need to come in. And then you own your own thing. So
I seriously enjoy this conversation because you've opened up my eyes to just different things. And I think that is so critical as a Caribbean person. And even, growing up, Carrie, you chat so much and you learn to just shut up, right? And having this like, me chat so much is a skill. If it wasn't a gift, God would have made me chat so much, exactly. Right? And how to use that. And so, for anyone listening, what is that skill that you have that you've told? You draw too much, you run too much, you do something too much. How is that transferable in a market like where we are in a pandemic where you need to leverage multiple skill sets, just to survive?
I mean, anything you love. Hey, I'm telling you, I've yet to meet someone who has said to me, this is the thing that I love to do. And I speak a lot in schools, like high school level, etc. I've yet to meet a kid that tells me, oh, I love this, I love that. And I couldn't point to them, one or two or even more ways that they can take that passion. And as long as they're willing to do the hard work, that's the only piece that's a prerequisite. You have to be willing to do the hard work and take it and say, hey, I bet you didn't know you can do this. I have a friend, that works at Twitter. He's the head of sports. He loved basketball, sports, everything growing up. Now his entire job is just to run around with sports athletes and organizations and bring them onto Twitter. And so when you're on Twitter and you see NBA Twitter, that's my boy that did that. And it all was born out of his love for sports.
Yeah.
And just growing on top of that. So there's so many ways. If you love dancehall music, like you can take that and say, okay, I'm going to go and be a part of, how can we bring that music into advertising? How do we bring it into different areas? There's so many places that you can sort of take that skill and go. So like anybody listening to this, if you're old and you have picnic, you should let them know that advertising and marketing is a path for them. And they don't have to go be a doctor. They don't have to go be that. If they want to and they love that, go do that. I'm not knocking it. But if they don't know what they want to do, like let them listen to this. Let them go start checking it out and realizing that there's 50 million jobs that no matter what it is they're passionate about, they can take it and work in this industry. I'm telling you, it's one of the biggest blessings that happened to me. I fell into it. I didn't know what it was I was going to do. And I fell into it and couldn't be happier because I found the thing that, I was good at and aligned with like how I can sort of grow and build and provide for my family.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. And on that note, we're going to wrap up because, boy, I don't know if we can take so much more inspiration because now my list longer of things I have to do. But before we go, tell everyone where they could find you on the internet.
Yeah, my LinkedIn is Cavel Khan, Cavel Khan. My Tumblr is Cavel Khan, and my Twitter is @Cavel. Those are the open places. My Instagram is only for family and friends, so sorry, you can't get into that.
Yeah, my personal IG is private, so It is over there. But again, Cavel, thank you so much for a great conversation about advertising, the marketing space, opportunities for the Caribbean, small business owners. There's a lot out here, and I know I'm going to send the episode to some of my friend them in the music space, so them can come link you and ting. But again, thanks everyone for listening, and until next time, walk good. The Carry On Friends podcast is produced by Breadfruit Media, and new episodes are available every other Tuesday morning. You can listen to the podcast on the website, carryonfriends.com, or you can listen on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, or wherever you like to listen to your podcast.